This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you in partnership with ministryleague.com. We would love for more people to discover this show, so please rate and review us on iTunes or your podcast provider. Feel free to share on your social media and subscribe at benandtravis.com for the free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living. Welcome into another Ben and Travis Helping Healing Humor podcast. We have with us today a very, very special guest that we'll get to in just a moment. Travis, have you had a good week this week?
I've had a good week. We had homecoming at school, but it was cut short because we had to extend fall break due to quarantines. Too many teachers on quarantine. But I got to go back, and I'm tired, but it was a good week. We had a good time. Came up short in the football game, but it is what it is. I know the kids enjoyed having homecoming, getting ready for a full week of school, and I'm sure that'll be fun. But outside of the loss Friday night, I'm doing wonderful, and can't wait for our awesome interview today.
Absolutely. Are you completely COVID-free in your household now? Because all four of them had COVID.
Wow.
Travis and his wife and his two kids, but I think they're
Daniel
all doing better.
Will be able to go back to school. Whitney could have went back Friday, but obviously with Daniel at home, she was unable to do that. But we're all ready to go back to school, and they're bouncing off the walls and begging to go back to school. So we must have been effective in our torture of staying home. So they're ready to go back to school.
Awesome. Well, we have with us today a very, very special guest, and we got to know Mama. We call her Mama Joy. This is Mama Joy Watkins. She is from the Rogersville, Alabama area, or Athens, Alabama area, both of those areas. She works in one, I think lives in the other. But Mama Joy, I asked her a few minutes ago, I said, is your name Joy or is your nickname Joy? Because it could be either way, because she is a joy to be around.
Aww.
She is a lot of fun to be around. And we got to know her through something she's probably going to talk to us about in a little bit, but got to know her because my daughter played volleyball for her, and kind of on a club team, and got Destin really involved and excited about volleyball. And so she's continuing that all because of Mama Joy. So thank you for being with us, Mama Joy. How are you today?
I am doing awesome. I'm so glad to be here. So excited that that we have this opportunity to share some thoughts about our journeys.
Yeah, well, this was, as our listeners know, this kind of started up with Travis and with his journey, and some of the things that he went through. And I think you guys share a little bit in that both of you have fought cancer,
Right.
different forms, different kinds. But certainly we see your shirt. Those who may be watching on Facebook see that. But anyway, so is there anything else that we need to know about you before we get started? I know I shared a few things, but what else about you?
Well, let's see. I'm an only child.
Okay.
And most days my mom still treats me like I'm about two. I'm very spoiled. You can ask anybody; they'll tell you that's accurate. My birthday, funny story. My birthday is November 17th. But if my mom looks at the clock and it says 11:17, she doesn't see time. She sees my birthday, and she would tell me happy birthday. It's so bad that even my children now do that. Well, they'll send me a text and say, "Mom, it's your birthday." And I mean, it could be June, but if it's 11:17, it's my birthday.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you have three kids, right? Two daughters and a son.
That is right. My son Kendrick is 34. And then my daughter Candace is 28, and my youngest Tamia is 20, but she'll be 21 in December.
And the best part about those kids is that they've given you grandkids too, right?
Yes. I have three.
Three grandkids.
So I have Aiden, who is 6, but will be 7 in November. His sister Alyssa is 5, and she'll be 6 in December. He's actually 1 year, 1 month, and 1 week to the day older than his sister. And then I have my oldest child. He has a 3-year-old, but has a little boy on the way that's due in March.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So the other ones were, is it called Irish twins? They were really close to being Irish twins. Like a month, I think, from being that, if they're born in the same calendar year. I don't know. Or it may have to be in the same calendar year, or is it in the same
I'm not
year.
sure.
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure,
Anyway.
but that we treat them like they're twins, and most people think they're twins when they look at them.
Yeah,
Because
they do. They look very similar.
That's the way with my
very.
two. They're a year and a month apart as
Okay.
well. And I think you are right. I think
Okay.
it's a calendar year they have to be, but
I
ours are
think
so
so.
close. They might as well be twins because I think they
Right.
share a language that the rest of us don't know.
I noticed that. Yes, with my yes, they do. And we just sit in awe of them because they understand what they're saying. No one else does.
That's awesome. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, so Joy, tell us a little bit about your journey, because I know
Ooh.
you probably got a lot of different things you could talk about with it,
Wow.
but
Yeah.
just, we wanted you to come on
Okay.
and share some things. One, obviously, because I know some of your journey, but also know a lot of the great things you're doing as a result of your journey. So
All
tell us
right.
about the journey,
All right.
first of all.
So from the very beginning, I felt as though this journey was God appointed, and I know that everything is. But there were so many examples of how that's true. So I started having mammograms at the age of 35. At that time, that was recommended.
Mhm.
But I didn't have any breast cancer history in my family. And so I was insurance typically won't pay for mammograms back then
Okay.
if with no history. And so I had my baseline at 35, and then I went again at 37. And both of those mammograms were in April. And that's important because at the time, Southside Church of Christ had, this massive homecoming that we put on for years and years and years. And we always, on the Sunday, fixed plates for everybody that came. And like we had 1,500 people. And so we
Wow.
would do shifts, and the sisters would be in the kitchen, and, some would be in worship, and then they would come and relieve. And anyway, so we were fixing all these plates. Well, the year 2005, I decided that I was going to take a more active role, and I was going to head up the kitchen work. And so homecoming is in April. I always have my mammograms in April. So I actually had my mammogram in February. And um, when I went that day, I remember standing in front of the machine that women just, fear. But I remember
Mhm.
standing in front of that machine thinking, they're going to call me. They're going to call me this time. I had this sense. And so I was actually in my car. I was working in Coleman, and I was headed home, and I had just gotten off the interstate, and I was in front of Shoney's. I remember it like it was yesterday, and my phone rang, and it was the doctor's office. And so I wasn't surprised at all. And they said, Miss Joy, we got your results back, and we see a shadow, and so you're going to need to come back. And I was like, I was expecting it. I knew you were going to call me. And so when I went back for the recheck, I remember standing there, and I told the young man that was in the room with me, I said, "You guys are going to have to call me again." And he was like, "Oh, it's going to be all right. She'll be in a minute, and we're going to, she'll redo the test, and everything's going to be fine." And I was like, "I mean, you're going to have to call me." And so, of course, they did.
Mm.
And the crazy thing about that is I went in February, and I was going to be busy in April. Here I am thinking I'm doing this mammogram early because I was going to be so busy in April. That wasn't it.
Yeah.
God was like, "Okay, girl, I need you to go on. So we got this journey for you." And actually at homecoming, just a couple of months later, I was able to start sharing my story. And there
Wow.
were women, we always had a picnic on Saturday as well. And at that picnic, I spoke that year, and several women came up to me afterwards, and they were like, "I've never had a mammogram before." And I mean, they were older than me. I was 39 when I was diagnosed.
Wow.
And there were women in their 50s that had never had one. And they came to me and they said, "I'm going to go home, and I'm going to schedule a mammogram because of you." And so that just, that solidified what I believed was part of the reason for this journey that I was on.
It's crazy to me, and Travis, you can attest to this because of your story too, because we know you were right in the middle of football season, when that happened. But it's always interesting how with anything, we're like, I'm too busy to stop and do this. I'm too busy to stop and do that. But when something like this happens,
Right.
all that just goes out the window. It's like, wait a minute,
Absolutely.
I'm not too busy for anything. Like
Absolutely.
if there's an emergency, you take care of the
Right,
emergency,
right,
and
right.
you understand then just what really an emergency
Right,
is. And
right.
so that's pretty impressive too in and of that. But you've been through some crazy stuff since then, I guess, and you've shared that story. So what were some of the biggest struggles about that journey and that struggle?
Probably for me, the biggest struggle was how it affected my husband. Um, and I forgot that everyone has to deal with situations in their way.
Mm.
Um, I often say disappointments are unmet expectations,
Mhm.
but you can't be upset with someone if, if they didn't know the expectation you had, or if they weren't capable of giving you what you expected. And
Mhm.
it's really not fair. It's really not fair. And everybody deals with it differently. The Willinghams that were,
Mhm.
their the way they addressed it worked for them. That's how it played out for them. And it wasn't like that for me. And I really had some resentments that I had to deal with because I kind of felt like he got to not be a part of it. But later I discovered that he was afraid I was going to die, and he didn't want to watch it. And so it was easier for him to step back. And at times it seemed as though he got to not participate, like it didn't affect him, but it did. And
Mm.
so I've had to learn, and I've shared this with lots of women. Your husband may not be able to hold your hand. That may not be how he can deal with it. And we got to learn to accept people for where they are. As a social worker, I meet people where they are every day. That's my job. And that's why I expected
Yeah.
differently from my husband wasn't fair to him.
That's a really good point. And I think we all, even as a counselor, I've said this a lot, it's hard to counsel your kids. I mean, you
Absolutely.
see things differently
Yes.
when when you're looking at it as a parent or as a spouse or whatever
Right.
else. So that's very interesting.
And it was even more interesting is he's a therapist. And so in my mind, it was like, okay, but so you're supposed to be this, but he was who he needed to be. And I can't hold that against him or anybody that doesn't do what you think they should. That's not
Mhm.
really your place, because
Yeah.
they have to figure it out for them. Just like it didn't bother me. I never missed a beat. Like I remember one time I was in the hospital when they put the port in for my chemo. I got out of the hospital, and the next day I was in my car driving to Montgomery because I had a meeting. I was like, well, I gotta go. And I drove all the way there. It was so funny. A coworker, we always went together. Well, by the time that meeting was over, this girl was tired. And so we get in the car to come back from Montgomery. And I love my friend. I really do. But she was scaring me, how she was driving on the interstate. So I was like, girl, it's okay. I can drive back. And so she pulled over on the side of the interstate, and we switched seats, and I drove the rest of the way home. But I was like,
I got cancer, but you're the one that's going to kill me.
Right. It was so funny. She hates driving. I used to drive all the time. It was so
That's
funny.
Well, that's an interesting thing
So-
that you mentioned there, because when I got my diagnosis, it was so like, you're doing everything that you normally do, try to be as normal as possible. You get through it. And for me, it's like I've had more difficulty, in the last year emotionally dealing with it than I ever did when I was actually going through the hard part. Because for me, any problem somebody brings me, well, it's you didn't get leukemia news today, like your problem, is it really that big a deal in the long big scheme of things, but that has hurt me from like being a compassionate person to some degree, because I'm kind of like, well, this isn't the end of the world, uh, but it could still be a big deal. But you mentioned that you work in the child services, and to me, and I'm an adoptive parent. I was a foster parent, still am. that's just an amazing world in of itself, that work that you do. We're just continually amazed by the people that we worked with, that were in those situations and taking care of those people. So I can imagine that to some degree that also, and obviously it takes I think a special person to do that job, eh, but also dealing with that. I guess you were doing that when you got the news. Was that the same job that you had, or were you doing something else at the time?
No, actually. So I've actually only been doing, and that's a funny story too. I've actually only been working for DHR for 1 year. My 1 year anniversary was this past Friday. When I was in college, I did my internship with DHR in Lauderdale County. And I remember saying, I will never work for DHR. Never. The only way I'll work for DHR is McDonald's and Burger King won't both hire me at the same time, and my children won't have food to eat. That's the only way. So God said, okay, girl, fine. Your children grown, now what? And I was like, okay, I'm going. And it's the right time for me to be there. I've been a practicing social worker for 25 years.
Okay.
I've done substance abuse. I've worked in girls group homes. I've done any social work job the health department had. I probably did it. And I really feel like those jobs plus being a mom prepared me for this. I don't take the cases home with me, and that's important.
Yeah.
Like some of the cases are just heart-wrenching, to know some of the things that the children that we see every day are dealing with that you would have no idea. And so because of my experience, I'm ready. I was ready for this. And, God, people say all the time, God has a sense of humor, and he's just been laughing with me all the way. I was like, okay, God, yeah, I'm there. But it is very special work. And it's probably the most rewarding thing I've done as a social worker.
So you've been in social work for that time.
Yes.
You just weren't specifically in this job that you're in now.
Yeah, I was a social worker at 10. I remember being at school and even adults, as long as I can remember, going back to being an only child, it's my personality. I know it. But even as a child, there were people that somehow needed to tell me stuff, and like, I've always been that person, and I never stopped that. I have to tell myself, you're not at work. Like if somebody says, "Oh, I'm not sure what to do," and my mind goes to, "Okay, you can do this, this, and this." Like I can't help it. It's really
problem solving.
Yeah, it's not what I do, it's who I am.
Yeah,
it really is.
Well, kind of going back to that with your husband, then how did you guys resolve that? I know you said some of the feel of resentment and some of that with it. How did that sort of get resolved? I assume you guys had been together a long time before this.
Right. And it just took time. And it was my bag, not his.
Yeah.
And so it was something that I had to work through. And he is a very introverted person. He really is. And people that know him find that surprising, but he really is, and he's very private. And so I'm a let's just tell everybody everything person.
Don't think it's as private with you.
No, it's not. I'm a sharer, and I really believe that there's a place for both of us. And it works. We're total opposites. He calls me the social butterfly, and I am. Listen, our congregation is like, if you walk, it'll take you 3 minutes to get there. If you drive, it takes you 30 seconds. And we never ride in the car together because he's ready to go.
Yeah.
And I'm socializing.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID. Yeah.
Doing that now.
Well, that sounds like a preacher's family. We don't ever ride because Kenya, by the time I get done, she's ready to be gone with the kids because they're running around crazy. So I understand that.
That was really interesting because with Whitney, I'm kind of the clown. I know that's hard to believe. And once I got to the point, I was too tired to be the clown and lighten the mood. That was really hard for her because like I said, I'm usually the one, cracking a joke or doing a weird noise or something along those lines to kind of break the ice. And I just remember her saying that was really hard. Once I got to the point, I was just too tired to really be the social butterfly. I can remember sitting and I had a friend who drove from Birmingham to come see me. One of my bandmates came, and I eventually had to be like, hey guys, you can stay here as long as you like, but I have to close my eyes at this exact moment. I'm just too tired. I know that was difficult for her to see that because, like I said, I'm like you. I'm the social butterfly. Let's fix it. Let's put the next step. Fight, fight, fight. And that was
Absolutely.
difficult for her as
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah, Travis's during his thing, I think their team motto was "The impossible is nothing," and so they had plastered that all over his hospital room.
Oh, wow.
And all that. So our faith comes into play in all this.
Absolutely.
So and we know you're a great person of faith as well. So how did that play into this story for you?
So I never for one moment doubted the outcome. Like I was so confident that, that this was a journey that was for someone else, that it really wasn't for me. And so I needed to be strong, and show the power of God. In fact, Southside, we're the singing church. We have 12 groups, and everybody's in the same. Everybody's in 12 different groups, but every group has their own sound. I've never figured that out, but anyway. So in 2006, we were at the NACAMA. It's a national a cappella music awards program, and it's on the even years at Thanksgiving. And so we were in Florida, and I was actually sitting in the back of this room, and Southside Committed, that group. They were singing, and everybody started looking at me, and I realized that they were singing a song that they had written about me, "Victory Is Mine." And I boo-hooed. Now that's something about me. I will cry in a heartbeat. Anyway, my kids, don't make her cry. Whatever you do, just don't make her cry. But anyway, but they were singing this song, and there's a verse, a part of the song that talks about me being afraid. And I had to tell them I wasn't afraid. And I get it for the song, for the impact of the song, but I need you to know I was never afraid, because I always believed that there was a purpose for it, and the purpose didn't include me dying. And so it was stage one. It was a shadow. Like it was so faint that they had to send me to nuclear radiology to put a string on it. So when I got upstairs for the biopsy, they could find it without him having to poke around and search for it. And so it was not in my lymph nodes. I had 4 chemo treatments, but my doctor wanted to be aggressive because of my age and the fact that there were no other women in my family that had it. So I also had 39 rounds of radiation.
Wow.
But that was not a big deal either. I was working in Decatur, actually, when I was going through treatment. When you work for the health department, they just send you everywhere they need somebody. But anyway, when I was going through radiation, I was actually working at the Morgan County Health Department, and I did my radiation there. I took my 15-minute break and went and had my radiation and came back to work.
Hey guys, Travis here. I'm wondering if any of y'all are like me. You see, I need some accountability when it comes to self-care and exercise. Left to my own devices, I will just think about and plan to make healthy changes in my attitudes, actions, and habits rather than actually doing the work that will bring better holistic health to my life. That's why we created the Ben and Travis Facebook group. The group began as an accountability group for holistic health. We host different challenges throughout the year on this platform that make it easier for our group members to stick to their plan and reach their goals. This group is an encouraging and challenging team atmosphere. Check out what Chuck from Iowa had to say about our first Facebook group challenge. I feel better than I have felt in about 10 years. I feel younger and leaner and better about myself, and I'm overall healthier in mind, body, and soul. Thanks to the Lord for guiding me to the Batify Challenge.
So hop on over to facebook.com/groups/Ben and Travis to join. You don't want to miss our upcoming November challenge. We're calling it the most grateful Thanksgiving ever. In this challenge, we're going to work on mindset and happiness with some tips from Jeff Olson's book, The Slight Edge. We believe this challenge has the power to truly transform mental health, and we are excited for our community to be a part of it. Again, just go to facebook.com/groups/Ben and Travis to join. We can't wait to see you there. How long did that whole process take?
I started
when they found it to when?
So they found it in February, and I finished treatment in November.
Okay.
So
Wow.
I did 4 rounds of chemo, and then I had to wait a couple of weeks, and then I went right into radiation. And I was fortunate that it wasn't in my lymph nodes. I just had a lumpectomy. I didn't have to have a mastectomy or anything. About 7 years in, they had a scare when I did a mammogram, and they sent me for this special test, and they said it'll be about a week before we hear. I said, "Oh, okay, good. Well, I'm on my way to the beach. My bag's in the car. I'll see you later." And while I was at the beach, I had been there 2 days. They called me, and they were like, "It was nothing. It was just scar tissue." I said, "Girl, you didn't have to call me. I already knew." I was like, "I'm on vacation. I will talk to you later."
Not too worried about it.
We ask you about how God had spoke to you through this circumstance, and you mentioned my favorite book of the entire Bible, and that's Romans.
Right.
And my favorite chapter is Romans 8. If you ever heard me preach a sermon, you're going to get a Romans 8 reference. And you mentioned Romans 5, I believe it was 1 through 4.
Yes.
You want to tell us a little bit about that text and why that spoke to you?
Okay, because it talks about being justified by faith. It talks about peace, and it talks about hope. It talks about having glory in God, and all those things were a part of my journey. And I love that scripture. In fact, just this past week, a sorority member, a lady I work with, contacted me and said, "I want to feature you on our page. Can you send me a picture of you and maybe a quote or a scripture?" I was like, "Girl, Romans 5, 1 through 4." Like that. I mean, I love the scripture.
No question.
I mean, it's awesome because it talks about, how tribulation works to increase your faith, and it gives you patience, and all that's important in whatever we're facing, whatever our challenge is, whether it's a relationship challenge, whether you're having trouble with your children, if you are having trouble on the job, like whatever it is, this scripture for me is very comforting. I love it.
Yeah. If you want to get Travis fired up, just start talking about Romans, and you're going to get it, because it is constant with him when you start talking about that. So we want to ask a couple of fun questions from you, and so I think you've had a little bit of opportunity to think about these as we get ready. So do you have any unpopular opinions?
There's no such thing as a cute cat.
That was quick.
No such thing as a cute cat. Like, listen, I don't do cats. In fact, my toes are curled in my shoes right now, just talking about cats. I don't do cats. In fact, I was pregnant. Listen, I was pregnant with Tamia, my youngest, and we had gone to visit a friend. And when we walked in the house, the mom said, hey, Candace, this stray cat came to the house and is out in the barn, and she's had some kittens. And if you want to go see it, you can go out there. So the daughter and my daughter were going to go. And I was like, Candace, don't bring that cat to this house. And so I'm sitting there talking to the mom, and Candace comes in. She said, I got the cat. And she was only kidding, but it had followed her. Now, I was 7 months pregnant, but I looked like I was probably about 14 months pregnant. In 3 steps, I was standing on the back of the couch. in my friend's house because his cat was in the room. Like, I don't do it. So there's no such thing as a cute cat.
So Karen Mann, if you're listening, I know that you usually are. She's a cat person. We have this back and forth a little bit. I'm a dog person. She's a cat person.
Dog's okay.
Dog's okay, but no cat.
No
Travis
cat.
has both, I think.
And I'd gladly get rid of her cat tomorrow if.
And so, you know what? I don't go to anyone's house that has a cat. Not because the cat lives there, not me.
Yeah.
And so you don't need to put your cat up because I'm there. I mean, that's my thing. So, and my friends were like, no, I don't mind now. My daughter has a cat. That one that brought the cat, she has a cat. I haven't been to her house yet. It's been a year.
So here's the thing with cats is, like dogs are man's best friend. I mean, we know that, right? I mean, they love you, lick you, and whatever. A cat looks at you like, if I was just a little bit older or a little bit bigger, if I was a big cat, I'd eat you.
Yes.
I mean, that's the way they look at you. And it's like, it's just disconcerting.
Yeah, I just,
I'm not. All right. No. Well, we're that's not unpopular in this show.
You're good.
It's going to be unpopular out there. It's not unpopular here.
You're right at home. Right at home. Before we wrap up, and I think we'll talk a little bit more in depth about this in the second episode, but before we wrap up the first episode, tell us about your website.
Oh, okay.
Just a little bit, at least your address of where to go and what it's about.
So it's girlgotpower.com. And Girl Got Power is it's a mentoring program that I am starting. I really enjoy working with young people, but especially young girls. There's so many girls that rely on other people's impressions of them. And I want to see young ladies be comfortable in their skin and not worry about what the next person thinks. I want them to get to the place where, that they are okay with who they are, that they are confident in themselves, in their abilities, which is why I coach volleyball. Because volleyball is a sport that you don't have to be the fastest, you don't have to be the smartest in the classroom. I mean, like, you don't have to have accolades. You just have to be one of the three people that get the ball over, because you got 3 hits every time, and it gives such confidence. I have a young lady that played for me that was the shyest person ever, and volleyball has done a lot for her. And so Girl Got Power is just that. I want my girls to know that they have power.
Well, Mama Joy, we're so thankful that you joined us. I'm looking forward to episode 2. I'm sure everybody that has heard episode 1 is excited as well. I'm ready to get into more of that, what you were talking about there at the end. But thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.